That morning, I watched Serena Cole do something the rest of the kitchen staff only found out about an hour later. She stood at the end of the hospital corridor outside the administrative wing, coat still on, coffee untouched in her hand, and told the facilities director that Sunridge Medical Center's East Wing cafeteria would be consolidated into the main building by end of quarter. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was there because the steam table in the East Wing had been leaking condensation under the floor tiles for 3 weeks, and nobody from maintenance had come back to finish the job after the first visit. So I had my tools out, the floor panel up, and half the morning rush pretending not to notice me crouched by the wall. That was how things worked at Sunridge. Administrators walked fast, kitchen staff moved around them, and everybody acted like the food showed up by itself. Serena did not look like someone who second-guessed herself. She wore a gray blazer over dark slacks, heels that made a precise sound on hospital linoleum, hair pinned back so tight it looked like a decision. I had seen department heads get quiet when she passed. Not because she raised her voice. I had never once heard her raise her voice. It was something else. She paid attention the way that made people feel like every word they said was being weighed, and most of it was coming up light. The facilities director nodded and made notes and didn't push back once. I went back to tightening the floor coupling, but my jaw stayed set for the rest of the morning. By noon, the East Wing staff knew. Not details, but enough. Consolidation. Possible reassigns. Nobody had used the word layoffs yet, but it was sitting in the room with everyone anyway, like a smell. 2 of the dietary aides stood near the loading dock at break and didn't talk much. Jerome, our lead line cook who had been at Sunridge for 14 years, stared at the prep schedule on the wall like he was trying to find something in it that still made sense. Heard it's budget-driven, he said. Everything is, I told him. He shrugged once, but his shoulders didn't come back down all the way. I had been the cafeteria supervisor for the East Wing for 6 years. My job was making sure 800 patients and staff got fed every day from a kitchen that ran on 3 functioning burners out of 4, a walk-in cooler that liked to freeze things on the left side only, and a rotating crew of people who knew how to make institutional food taste like something worth eating. I had come to Sunridge after culinary school and one failed attempt at a restaurant, which taught me that cooking for people who needed it mattered more to me than cooking for people who were bored on a Friday night. Serena knew who I was because of the salmonella near miss 8 months earlier. A vendor had sent us a batch of pre-cut melon that flagged in my temperature log. I pulled it before service, wrote it up, sent it to Food Services Compliance, and got told the report was thorough, but the vendor relationship was long-standing, and I should let the process play out. I pulled the melon again anyway when the second delivery came in with the same temperature discrepancy. I documented everything and sent it directly to the COO's office. 2 days later, Serena came down to the East Wing herself, walking through the kitchen in the middle of lunch prep without announcement, and found me at the receiving dock checking a 3rd delivery. "You're the one who flagged the vendor twice?" she asked. "Still flagging," I said. She looked at my log, asked 3 direct questions, understood all 3 answers, and had the vendor contract suspended before I finished my shift. She also told the food services director that if compliance reports got buried to protect a vendor relationship again, she would want to know why personally. After that, she knew my name. I found that out when she passed me in the elevator one morning and said, "Good morning, Theo," instead of just walking through me. That evening I was home in Glenside, trying to convince my 7-year-old, Sam, that mac and cheese with broccoli mixed in still counted as mac and cheese. "The broccoli is hiding," he said. "That's the point," I said. He looked at me with the deep suspicion of a child who has been deceived before. Outside, the November rain had turned into sleet, the kind that doesn't come down so much as lean sideways. The streetlights had that fuzzy glow through the window, and the apartment felt small in the good way, heat clicking on, Sam humming to himself while he systematically excavated each piece of broccoli and lined them up on the edge of his plate like arrested suspects. My phone rang from a number I didn't recognize except that it had the hospital exchange prefix. I almost let it go. Then I answered anyway. "This is Theo." A pause, whined in the background, faint but present. "Mr. Hendricks, Serena Cole." I looked at the clock on the microwave, then at Sam who had stopped humming. "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry to call you at home." She said it like a fact, not a formality. My car stalled on the shoulder of Route 73, north of the Willow Creek exit. My roadside assistance estimate is 2 hours minimum. My regular driver is out sick. I was already standing up. Are you in the car now? Yes, heat. It's declining. Don't try to restart it if it won't catch. Keep the hazards on and stay away from the road edge. I grabbed a pen. Send me your location pin. Another pause. Shorter this time. I remembered you mentioned living in this direction. During the vendor situation, I'll be there any minutes. Send the pin. Sam slid off his chair. Daddy. I covered the phone. I have to go get someone. She's stuck in the rain. Who? Someone from work. Can I come? No, you're going to Mrs. Patterson's for a bit. She smells like cats. She has one cat. It smells like more. I called Mrs. Patterson, who came over in a rain jacket and slippers carrying a book she'd clearly already been reading, settled Sam on the couch with the television, and a promise to find the cookies she definitely had somewhere, and I kissed his forehead and took my truck out into the worst of the evening. Route 73 was bad. Not cinematic bad, just real bad. The sleet made everything shiny and dark, the kind of roads where you can see your own headlights reflected in the pavement. And it looks like the road is wet all the way to the horizon. I drove with both hands and took the interchange slower than felt necessary. Her car wasn't hard to find. Black sedan, hazards going weak in the rain, pulled tight to the guardrail with a white ridge of slush already building up around the passenger side. I pulled in ahead of her, left my lights on, and walked back with my hood down, because it had blown up twice already, and wasn't worth the fight. She opened the door before I reached it. First thing I noticed, she was dressed like someone who had planned to go from a parking garage to a building and never be outside. Good coat, wrong shoes entirely, thin gloves without lining. Her face was composed in that way she had, but her fingers were stiff when she reached for her bag. Come on, I said, you can deal with the car tomorrow. She looked at me for 1 second like she was considering whether that was reasonable. Then the sleet drove itself sideways between us and she stepped out. I got her into the passenger seat and turned the heat all the way up. She held her hands near the vents without rubbing them. Even warming up, she kept the control. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. The interstate is closed from exit 14 south. I checked while I was driving. She was already on her phone. There's a Marriott near the junction, overbooked since 6. I saw it on the alerts. Her jaw shifted slightly. Then what do you suggest? My place is 12 minutes from here in normal weather. Tonight probably 25. I kept my eyes on the road. It has heat, food, and my son, who was in the middle of interrogating his dinner when I left. She turned her head slightly. Your son, Sam? He's 7. I don't want to impose. It's not an imposition, it's a storm and a dry floor. She was quiet long enough that I thought she was going to suggest another option. Then she looked at her car disappearing behind us in the rain and said, all right. The drive home was slower than I'd said it would be. She made 2 calls, both short. One about the car, one to someone named Greer, telling him the board presentation packet for Thursday needed one more revision, and to hold the operations slide until she'd reviewed the projections again. Her voice stayed level, but I heard the weight under it. The things she wasn't saying out loud. When we pulled into my parking lot, the light above the entrance was flickering the way it had been for 2 months. Sam's drawings were taped inside the window of our unit on the 2nd floor. A paper turkey from Thanksgiving that hadn't quite made it down yet. Inside, the apartment smelled like brown butter and dish soap, and a little bit of the crayon smell that never fully left no matter how much I cleaned. Mrs. Patterson's rose from the couch. Sam was asleep against the armrest, with his mouth open and both socks off, which meant he had been awake approximately 4 minutes after I left. Serena stepped in behind me and stopped just past the doorway. I watched her take it in, shoes kicked off by the door, 3 different sizes. The stack of library books on the counter with a half-eaten granola bar on top. The drawings on the refrigerator, 2 of which were exclusively purple, for reasons Sam had never fully explained. The bright plastic of Sam's retractable measuring tape, sitting on the kitchen table, next to a permission slip I had not signed yet. She looked like someone who had walked into a place that was using a language she recognized but hadn't spoken in a while. Sorry about the state of things, I said, because that is what you say. It's not a state, she said. It's a home. That wasn't quite accurate, but I let it go. Mrs. Patterson looked past me at Serena with the polite curiosity of someone who had been neighbors with me for 3 years and knew this wasn't a usual Tuesday. She gets stranded? Route 73. This is Serena. She works at the hospital. Serena extended her hand. Thank you for staying with Sam. Mrs. Patterson shook it without ceremony. In weather like this, nobody should be waiting alone anywhere. She got her coat, told me there were indeed cookies in the cabinet above the fridge, and stepped back into the rain like it owed her nothing. I locked the door. Serena still hadn't moved far from the entrance. "You can hang your coat," I said, nodding at the row of hooks by the door. She looked at them. One had Sam's backpack, one had my rain jacket, one had a reusable shopping bag from a grocery store that had since closed. She folded her coat carefully over the back of a kitchen chair instead. "That works too," I said. I didn't want to displace the system. The system is mostly just not stepping on the measuring tape. She looked down. The measuring tape was directly in front of her. She stepped over it. I made soup from the pot that was already on the stove, toasted the end of a bread loaf, and set a bowl in front of her. She sat at the kitchen table like someone taking their place at a meeting where they didn't know the agenda. Her phone buzzed every few minutes. She turned it face down after the third time. "That bad?" I asked. "It's never calm the night before a board preparation day. The consolidation?" She looked up. "I was there this morning," I said. "At the steam table, East Corridor." "I know." She folded her hands around the bowl. "The announcement goes to staff Thursday. People are scared. They should be preparing. That's the same thing for most of them." She looked at me for a moment. Not defensively. More like I had said something she had not accounted for. Sam stirred on the couch then. His eyes opened, confused, and found Serena immediately the way kids always find the thing that doesn't belong. "Daddy." A loud whisper. "There's a lady." "I know. This is Serena." She got stuck in the rain. He sat up slowly, hair pressed flat on one side. He studied her with the serious assessment of someone who had been promised the world contained only things he already knew. "Are you a doctor?" "No," Serena said. "I run the hospital." Sam considered this, like a principal, somewhat like that. "Our principal makes everybody be quiet in the hallway." He paused. "Do you do that?" "Sometimes, yes." He nodded like this confirmed something. "Do you want soup?" "I have some, thank you. Daddy puts too much pepper in it." "I put a normal amount of pepper," I said. "It's a lot of pepper," Serena said quietly, looking into her bowl. Sam pointed at her. "She gets it." He climbed off the couch and came into the kitchen and sat down across from hers like they had scheduled this. He asked her if she had kids. She said no. He asked if she had a pet. No. He asked if she wanted one. She said she traveled too much. He said his friend Tyler's mom traveled a lot and still had a hamster. Serena said she didn't have a good answer for that. Sam seemed to respect the honesty. "What do you do when you go home?" he asked. She looked at her soup. "I work, mostly." "That's what you do here too." "Sam," I said. "It's true," Serena said without defensiveness. "You're right." He shrugged and started on his soup. After a moment he said, "You can have my blanket if you stay." "Not my pillow though. The pillow is specific." "That's very fair," she said. Later I washed the dishes by hand, because the dishwasher had a sensor issue that I'd been putting off since September. Serena stood up with her bowl. I told her she didn't have to. She said she could wash a bowl. She said it the way someone says something they've been told the opposite of for too long. So I handed her the dish brush. She rolled up her sleeves and stood beside me at the sink. Sam dragged a chair over and supervised. Then the power went out. Not a flicker, just off. The refrigerator stopped. The heat stopped. The whole apartment went dark except for the gray-white glow coming off the sleet outside the window. Sam grabbed my sleeve. "Dad, it's okay. Give me 10 seconds. I found the flashlight in the junk drawer by memory. Got it on. Sam's eyes were wide, but he wasn't crying, which meant he was deciding whether to. Serena had not moved from the sink. She crouched down then slowly, so she was at eye level with Sam. In the flashlight glow, her face was different. The edge that she wore in the corridor, the thing that made department heads take notes, it wasn't there right now. "Hey," she said to Sam, "the dark is the same room. It just got quieter." Sam stared at her. "I don't like when I can't see the edges." "I know, but you know where everything is." He thought about that, then nodded once. I got candles from the cabinet, the portable battery lantern from the closet, and moved us all to the living room where the draft was less. I cracked the window an inch the way you're supposed to when you run the propane space heater, which I checked twice before lighting. Sam pressed himself against my side for the first few minutes, and then slowly, without making it a thing, shifted until he was leaning against Serena's arm instead. She went very still. I shrugged at her over his head. "She's offering," I mouthed. She held him like someone who was afraid that moving wrong would shatter something. Sam leaned into her anyway and was asleep again in 11 minutes. The candles made the room smaller and warmer than it actually was. Without the overhead lights, without the refrigerator hum, without all the noise a home makes when it's running, The apartment just felt inhabited. "Tell me a made-up story," Sam had said before he dropped off. "About a dog that finds something." "Dog finds what?" I asked. "Something important." So I made up a story about a dog named Governor who found a lost mitten on a hiking trail and spent the whole afternoon trying to return it to the right person in the wrong order. I told it badly on purpose, getting the details confused until Sam corrected me in a drowsy voice, and then his voice slowed and stopped. Serena looked down at him. "He trusts quickly," she said. "Not everybody, you got lucky." She looked at me. "Why me?" "I don't know. He usually hides for 20 minutes first." Something in that answer bothered her more than a criticism would have. I could see her turning it over. Later, when Sam was in bed and the candles had burned lower, I made hot chocolate on the camp stove. She sat at the kitchen table with the mug held in both hands, and we talked the way people talk when the lights are out and there's nowhere to be. She asked about Sam's mother. I told her. Julia had left when Sam was 2. Not dramatically. Just gradually, then completely. She had wanted a different life and she hadn't been wrong about that. Only about thinking this one would change. I'd built the routines after that. Same breakfast, same drop-off, same check-ins, same everything. It helped Sam. It helped me too, mostly. Sometimes I thought I'd made the days so stable that I'd forgotten to actually be in them. Serena looked at her mug. "My father built routines too," she said. "He ran a regional hospital network until the board forced him out. He was 52. He built routines after that too, just smaller ones. Dinner at the same table, news at the same hour." She paused. "He was very good at looking fine." "Is that where you learned it?" Her eyes came up. "You asked," I said. She held my look for a moment. "Maybe. Or maybe I learned it from watching what happened when he didn't look fine, and deciding that wasn't available to me. That sounds like a lot to carry." It became invisible. "The sleet ticked against the window," I said. "The consolidation is going to hit Jerome first. 14 years. He trained half the current kitchen staff. The dietary aide named Priya just got her hours up to full-time after 2 years part-time. And there's a woman in patient nutrition, Donna, who stays late twice a week to redo the texture-modified trays personally, because the automated process gets it wrong, and she knows which patients choke." Serena set down her mug. "Those people don't show up in a spreadsheet as anything except cost," I said. "I know their classifications. I'm not talking about classifications. I'm talking about the kitchen at 6:30 a.m. when the elevator's down and someone has to carry 83 trays up the east stairwell by hand because patient meals don't pause for infrastructure problems. Those are the people who figure it out." She was quiet for a moment. "What would you have me do? I'm not telling you how to run a hospital. I'm telling you what it looks like from where I stand." She didn't answer right away. Outside, the sleet had shifted to something closer to actual rain. Quieter. The candle between us had burned down to a stub. "My father told me once," she said, "that the hardest thing about having authority is that you have to keep making decisions after you've seen what decisions cost." She looked at the flame. "I think he meant it as a warning. I think I took it as a strategy. Maybe it can be both." She looked at me then, not the way she looked at things she was assessing, different from that. Like she was deciding whether I was somewhere she could put something down for a minute. The power came back on just after midnight. In the abrupt way power does, everything loud again all at once. The refrigerator hummed. The heater kicked on. The apartment lost some of whatever it had been for the last few hours. I slept in the recliner. Serena took the couch under Sam's extra blanket, which only reached her ankles. Sometime before morning I woke up, and she was sitting up in the dark, looking at Sam's drawings on the refrigerator, visible now in the small light from the microwave clock. She didn't know I was watching. Her face was completely open. Not soft, exactly. Just unguarded in a way I had never seen in 14 months of knowing her from across hospital corridors. Morning came the way it does after a hard night. Plain and cold and clear. Sam was up before either of us, already in the kitchen, very busy with the cereal situation. He poured Serena a bowl without being asked and pushed it toward her chair. "It's the good kind," he told her, "with the clusters." She sat down like she belonged there, which surprised me. "Can we show her the park?" Sam asked. "It's going to be wet. Everything's already wet. That doesn't change the park." He had a point. I looked at Serena. She was looking at Sam with an expression I didn't quite have a name for. "I'd like to see it," she said. We found a spare rain jacket in the closet, too big for her, and Sam insisted she wear his backup hat, which was green and had a brim that came down over her eyes until she folded it up. She let him adjust it like it was the most normal thing. We walked 3 blocks to the park, Sam ahead of us, jumping every puddle systematically, narrating which ones were good and which ones were disappointing. Serena walked beside me with her hands in the jacket pockets. She didn't say much. Neither did I. The park was wet and mostly empty, a few dog walkers, a father with a toddler who kept sitting down in puddles on purpose. Sam found a good stick and spent 20 minutes using it to redirect a stream of water in the gutter toward a drain. Serena watched him. Then she crouched down beside him and asked what he was trying to do. He explained his drainage engineering plan. She asked 2 serious questions. He answered them seriously. She made a suggestion about the angle, and he tried it, and the water moved faster, and he looked at her like she had revealed something important about the universe. Here, I watched her help a 7-year-old fix a puddle drainage problem with the same focus she brought to hospital board packets, and I felt something in my chest shift slightly, like something that had been braced against something else let go just a little. On the walk back, she got a call. She stepped a few feet ahead to answer it. I caught pieces. Not now, I said, not today. Then more quietly, because I'm telling you I need 24 hours before that goes to staff, Greer. That's not negotiable. She hung up and caught up to us without mentioning it. Work? I asked. It can wait, but I could see the weight settling back onto her. Whatever the park had let off, the phone was putting back on. Back at the apartment while Sam watched television, she came into the kitchen while I was making lunch and said, Jerome, you said 14 years since before I was there. What's his last name? Park. Jerome, Park. She took out her phone and typed it. The dietary aide, Priya Anand. He's in the East Wing Tuesday through Saturday, and the texture tray Donna Reyes. Patient nutrition, evenings. She typed all 3 without comment. This isn't me asking for exceptions, I said. It's me saying the people you're about to call a line item have names and I know them. She looked up. I understand the difference. Do you think the board does? She didn't answer that. She put her phone in her pocket and leaned against the counter and looked at the refrigerator, at Sam's drawings, at the cereal bowls still on the table, at all of it. You said the automated texture tray process gets it wrong, she said. 3 kinds of errors. I documented them last spring and sent it to Food Services Operations. They acknowledged it and said it was within acceptable variance. Acceptable variance for what? That's what I wrote back. I didn't get another response. She looked at me for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone again and took a photograph of the refrigerator. Just the drawings. I didn't ask why. After lunch, I drove her to the train station. She had arranged a car to meet her at the city end. She sat in the passenger seat of my truck, with her real coat on over the borrowed jacket, which she'd forgotten she was still wearing until we were halfway there. I'll return it, she said. It's a $30 rain jacket. I'll return it. At the station, she got out and then stopped and turned back. The rain had lightened to almost nothing. The sky was that flat pewter color after a long storm, not dramatic, just done. Theo, she said. I waited. I don't know what's possible in that room on Thursday. I want to be honest about that. I know, but I'm going in differently than I was going in yesterday. That's enough, I said. For now. She looked at me for a moment, something in her expression that I didn't try to decode. Then she turned and walked toward the platform. I waited until she was inside. The rest of that day was ordinary in the way days get after something unusual moves through them. I picked up Sam from Mrs. Patterson, who had fed him lunch and let him measure everything in her apartment with his retractable tape. I made dinner. I helped with the homework. I thought about Jerome and Priya and Donna and the East Wing and the board meeting on Thursday, and whether any of the conversation in my kitchen over candlelight had mattered at all, or whether it was just 2 people talking because the lights were out and there was nowhere else to be. Sam asked about Serena. At dinner, did she fix her work stuff? She's working on it. Is she nice? I thought about her crouching down to tell him the dark was the same room. I thought about her photographing his drawings. I thought about her typing names into her phone like they were things she intended to remember. Yeah, I said. She is. He nodded and went back to his food. He had eaten the broccoli tonight without negotiating, which I decided not to comment on. Thursday came and went without me in the room. The text I got from Serena at 2:47 in the afternoon said only, notices on hold. Reviewing individually, Jerome, Priya. Donna flagged for retention review. It's not over, but it's different. I read it standing in the East Wing kitchen service in the afternoon prep. Jerome was across the room, restocking the dry storage. He didn't know, none of them knew yet. I typed back. Good. Keep going, she replied, working on it. Then, after a pause, The texture tray documentation you sent to operations in the spring. I pulled it. You were right about the variance. We're reopening that review. I stared at that for a moment. Then I typed, Donna will be glad to hear it. 3 dots appeared then. I know. Tell her when you can. I didn't tell Jerome or Priya or Donna anything yet. That wasn't my information to give. But I walked through my kitchen that afternoon, with something loosened in my chest that I hadn't realized had been locked. She came by Saturday. Sam saw the car from the window and was at the door before I had my shoes on. She came up the steps carrying a box from the bakery, 2 blocks from the hospital that made the kind of cookies that were unreasonable in their quality. She had returned the rain jacket, folded, which she handed to me first like a formality that mattered to her. Sam opened the box without asking. I told him to ask. He looked at Serena. She said yes. He took 3. That's too many, I said. She said yes, he said. She is a guest, not a co-parent. Serena looked at me. He has a point about the jurisdiction. I let it go. She sat at the kitchen table and Sam showed her the tape measure trick where you could extend it past 6 feet before it buckled, and she asked him the physics of it, which he didn't know but wanted to figure out, so they spent 20 minutes on it while I made coffee. Later, when Sam was occupied, she sat across from me and folded her hands around her mug the same way she had in the dark. 3 more positions may still be cut, she said. Phew. I want to be honest with you. I know you can't hold the whole thing yourself. No. But I went into that room knowing what those positions were attached to. That's different from how I've done it before. She looked at her mug. I built my whole career around useful distance. I told myself it was professionalism. I think some of it was just not wanting to feel the weight of it. And now? She looked toward the living room where Sam was measuring the length of the couch very seriously. Now I think distance is just another word for not paying attention. I didn't answer right away. I looked at her at my kitchen table, in the same chair she'd sat in when the lights were out, the same chair she'd sat in when Sam offered her the blanket, the same chair that had somehow become the one she went to when she walked through my door. You're allowed to pay attention and still make hard calls, I said. They're not the same problem. She considered that. My father never figured that out. He swung between them. All the way distant or all the way in, and neither one held. You're not him, I'm aware. But she said it gently, like she was reminding herself too. Sam came in to report the couch was 7 feet and 1 inch. We both told him that was excellent data. He seemed satisfied and went back to the couch to measure it from the other end in case it was different. Serena looked at me. I'd like to come back, she said. Not because of the jacket. I already returned that. I noticed. Not because of work either. I know. She was quiet for a moment. Outside, the Saturday afternoon was that gray bright kind, the last of the week's rain gone but the clouds not quite done with the sky yet. I don't know how to do this slowly, she said. I don't need you to know. I just need you to want to. Something in her face changed, not dramatically, just like a door that had been open a few inches, open the rest of the way. Sam is going to have opinions, I said. He already does. They will multiply. I can work with that. It didn't go fast after that. Things that matter don't, usually. She had a board that was still watching her, a staff that needed to trust her change was real, and a company of habits she'd built over a career that didn't all go quiet at once, just because she'd spent a night in a kitchen with the lights out. I had Sam, who needed the adults in his life to be steady and sure before they were anything else. I had Julia's absence, which had stopped being an open wound years ago, but still had shape. I had my own way of keeping everything locked into its time slot, to stop the whole thing from feeling unmanageable. And that habit didn't just open up because I wanted it to. But she came back the next Saturday with better cookies. She and Sam finished the drainage engineering project on paper, with actual measurements and a hypothesis about rainfall rate that was ambitious for a second grader, and which Sam presented to me like peer-reviewed research. A few weeks later, she showed up with a question about the walk-in cooler. A similar model had a calibration issue at another site, and she wanted to know if I'd noticed anything. We stood in the East Wing kitchen for 40 minutes going through the temperature logs, and she asked questions that told me she had actually read the documentation I'd sent in the spring, all of it. Jerome passed us once, carrying a full hotel pan. He nodded at her. She said, "Good afternoon, Jerome." He stopped. He hadn't expected her to know his name. She had looked him in the face and named him and moved on. But he stood there for a moment after she'd passed, and I could see him deciding something about her. That mattered. One evening in January, she was at my kitchen table, doing something on her laptop while I made dinner, and Sam did homework badly at the other end of the table. The three of us had been in the same room for 2 hours, and nobody had needed it to be anything other than what it was. Sam looked up from his worksheet. Serena, how do you spell bureaucratic? She spelled it without looking up. He wrote it down. That's too many vowels. Welcome to English, she said. He sighed, like this was a personal injury, and went back to work. I kept cooking. The oven was the right temperature. The apartment smelled like garlic and the particular warmth of a room that's in use. Outside it had started to snow, the first real one of January, coming down in the steady way that meant it intended to stay a while. Serena closed her laptop and looked out the window. I saw it. That same look she'd had in the dark, when she'd thought no one was watching. Open. Undefended. What? I asked. She looked back at me. I was just thinking, she said, that I've been trying to remember the last time I was somewhere and didn't feel like I was waiting to leave. I put a lid on the pot and turned down the heat. And? She looked at Sam, who was now trying to erase something so aggressively the paper was in danger. She looked at the window with the snow coming down behind it. She looked at me. I think it was probably here, she said. I didn't answer that with words. I handed her a dish towel because the counter needed wiping, and that was what you did when dinner was almost ready, and someone was sitting at your kitchen table, like they'd always had a place at it. She took the towel. She wiped the counter. Sam asked if dinner was soon. I said yes. Serena said she hoped it had normal amounts of pepper. Sam told her it wouldn't, and the snow kept coming down, and the apartment stayed warm, and nothing about it was perfect or uncomplicated or simple. It was just real, and real was the thing I had stopped expecting to find again, right up until I did.